Let's talk about the art of quiet living. Um, if you have been asking me about this, so I spoke with a good friend of mine. Shout out to Wahid. Um, about my ideology of life and what I've learned from sort of like the mystical arts and the mystical tradition and how I've applied that to my life. I am someone who is practicality first. I don't like to dive, even though I've had, let's say, deeply mystical or spiritual experiences and so on and so forth. I'm not someone who likes to dive into these things too much into detail, especially when I'm sharing it. Firstly, via broken and incomplete languages, which is the language of man, I guess. And secondly, I believe vision dreams and these kinds of experiences, mystical occurrences, experiences are personal, private experiences. They should not all be shared and sort of like spoken of and for obvious reasons. And I call this the art of quiet living. A lot of people don't understand how the pendulum doesn't swing on the other end most of the times, because we see a lot of sort of like evil and misgiving in the world, and it's almost like we don't see this army of light that everyone's promising us, right, all the time. Oh, the army of light, oh, the light workers, they're coming, XYZ. mm, well, firstly, you have to understand what kind of world we're living in, and you have to understand what kind of world this is for you to understand what the function of an army of light would even be. That goes against the very ideal of light. What do you need an army? uh, what are you trying to conquer? Who are you trying to kill? What is the function of, well, a military clan, right? So this argument alone is enough to sort of like disperse the ideal of the army of light. So there is no army of light. There's no one coming to save you. There's nothing, no prophecy or any sort of miraculous global occurrence that's going to save you from the pitfalls of your own fucking terrible, terrible, terrible psyche and your own terrible self, right? There's a lesson in that. There's a very big lesson in that. And a lesson that this world, this our three-dimensional world, has been trying to impart uh, on our unfortunate and misguided souls for the for the remainder and for the duration of its existence, which is several millennia, right? What is the art of quiet living? Well, the art of quiet living is um, an extension of one's desire to both know this world and to exist in it with spirituality and consciousness, upgrading consciousness in mind. Okay? And it is a form, it is a way of inviting the mystical and miraculous into your life for, well, journeymen. And why I refer to people on the spiritual path as journeymen is because most people cannot decipher the true from the untrue. They can't understand what an objective metric is between bullshit and not bullshit. So the best thing I can do is I can give you a lens, I can give you a filtration system that will allow you to experience the mystical for yourself and see where the silver lining is, right? Now if you look into a mirror and say a name three times, is something going to happen in your life? No, it's not, because that's a symbolic act on its own. It doesn't mean much, right? Now let's start with a sort of um, like a puzzle piece, I guess. If you take a deck of tarot cards, okay? And I'm using the reference for tarot cards because it's very, everyone knows what it is. Sort of like every journeyman practitioner knows what it is. So you take a deck of tarot cards, and You assign meaning to each of the cards, and then you assign opposite meanings to, let's say, if a card's like turned, to one side or the other, you assign meaning to each card. Okay. And let's say you hold the wisdom and the knowledge and information that each of these meanings that you assign to the card somehow relate to archetypal energies of creation, and these archetypal energies are just forms of like these elemental aspects, um through which our reality can even exist. And then you assign, let's say, specific features or aspects or inclinations that these archetypal energies have. Okay, so the formulaic, the mechanics behind the deck of tarot cards. And then, because you've assigned these meanings to these cards, you've basically created a language that is closer, one could say, to the objective truths and ideals of these archetypal energies that we would like the tarot deck to embody. Okay, so now we're approaching something. Now we're approaching like the noob level of let's say, divination practice. But let me ask you this question: if you use this language that you just created, because what you've created now it's a reference of information, right? It's a database of information, and now you need a good interpreter to interpret this information. And you do 50 readings, right? You sit at a table, you pull out your tarot deck or whatever, and you do 50 readings. Cool. My question to you is, which one of these readings matter? So you don't just do one reading, okay? You do 50 to the point of exhaustion. You're bored, you're tired. You're working with a divine language, a divine, a reference for the divine matrix of creation itself. You do 50 readings. Which one of these readings matters? What's the answer to that? Is it all of them? Is it none of them? Is it some of them? Is it only the first or the last? This this is what most most of these fake spiritual gurus are are stuck. They're stuck with this discourse. They're stuck with it. Well, which reading matters? Oh, it's the first one. Ha, you guys don't know anything. It's actually the fifth one because five is the number of blah, 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 blah. You absolute idiots. You morons. Here you are interfacing with the body of God. None of the readings matter. None of the readings matter. You've already spoiled all of the readings. You've already spoiled it with your input. None of the readings matter. So out of the 50 tarot deck readings that you did, none of them matter. Because you have all collectively decided. You have all collectively decided that confusion is what matters. Because you've brought about confusion. You've brought about conflict and confusion. For the practitioner who sits at their own table in their private space and creates a tarot reading, just pulls a few cards out. Sure, there is the effect of the initial, right, the first, but the reading starts to matter when it starts to matter for you. What is the purpose of ritual? What is the purpose of theatrics? Especially if you study the formulaic forms of magic, the left-hand path of magic, the sort of like the even black magic. Why is there the grandiosity in the theatrics of ritual that is required? Because there has to be a collective agreement, a collective understanding that whatever is occurring here in this material space is of the highest importance. Do you understand? And now what increases the importance, the value, the energetic and emotional, the mystical value of a thing, human pain and suffering and the intensity of emotions, the harvesting of emotions, it grounds everything into a primal material state. Do you understand what I'm trying to teach you? Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? The purpose and function of ritual is to gain a collective understanding and agreement that whatever is occurring during the ritual is of the highest importance, that it matters. When the practitioner takes the deck of the tarot card and puts it in the palms of your hands and asks you, imagine, envision your energy going into the deck of cards. Why do they do it? Why can't they just do the reading? Let's do the reading. Because you have to agree to the idea, to the very nimble and careful idea that this reading is the one that matters. This reading is the one with mystical consequences. This reading is the one with clairvoyant qualities, with divination qualities. So every piece of theatrical display, it serves to strengthen the belief of those involved that the ritual matters. So I'll give you another example, right? The journeyman's understanding of black magic practice is, well, I'm going to create some sort of effigy or doll or something that is symbolic of, let's say, your persona or your parents' persona, or so on and so forth. And I'll put needles in them, and then I'll hide the doll under your bed. Why is the doll hidden under the bed? Is it there to not be found? Oh, I did this terrible thing to you. I hope you never find out. Oh no, it's hidden there to be found out. Now that's what most people miss. They think they think that the practice of the black arts and the black magic and so on and so forth has to be hidden away and tucked away in some dark and desperate corner of life where no one else knows about it. But that's how you starve it all out of energy. You need people to know about it. You need people to understand it. You need people to hear about it, to be in awe of the dark magic practice. So when you find the doll under your pillow or under your bed and it has you know it looks like you and it's wearing clothes like you and it has needles stuck into it, that is your agreement. Your emotional state of fear and awe is your agreement that the black magic practice is concluded. Now it works. So, what is the function of ritualistic practice? The function of ritualistic practice is for you to understand that it is you who enables these truths in your life. Now, how does this relate to what we started? I need people to understand that there are objective truths regarding everything, be it frequencies and wavelengths and black magic and light magic and whatever you want to call it. And these objective truths sometimes are, most of the times, they're misunderstood and they're lost in translation because everyone wants to pretend like they know everything. But this isn't true, especially when it comes to the darker side of the esoteric. Most people don't know shit, but they like to pretend like they know things. They like to theorize. They enjoy guesswork, but they don't even understand the basic mechanism behind magic as a form of, well, an actual objective material physical thing. So now We talked about voodoo dolls and things like that. Now, this is a journeyman's understanding of it, okay? But it's very important to understand the mechanism behind it. So, in every magical practice, there is one who plays the role of fool, and the other plays the role of jester. The jester is never the fool. The fool is one who is unaware of their participation in the ritual, yet participates with a heightened sense of intensity. Who is the fool, right? And I'm talking this from a journeyman's perspective, not from a universal perspective. Who is the fool in the practice of dark magic or black magic? It is the person who finds the voodoo doll beneath their bed sheets or beneath their pillow, and they are sent on a investigative journey of emotional turmoil, blame, fear. You understand? Now, the practitioner engaging in the practice could say something along the lines of like, it was just a practical joke. I just wanted to scare them. You didn't have to make such a big deal out of it. They know exactly what they're doing because they're playing the trickster. No, it's not a big deal. So what? You found a voodoo doll, his pin stuck. It's just, so what? Oh my God, get over it. That the person they victimize is now entrenched in not in curiosity. Curiosity is a very human element there, right? It's very difficult to resist that because, oh, well, who would do this? Why would they do it? Blah 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 blah. So what ritual does is it preys on your curiosity to find out more. That is why the theatrics are there. What are the masks for? The candles, the da 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 da. Eyes wide shut, right? I need you to understand the mechanism behind it before we get to talking about the art of quiet living. Now, a lot of people on the other side of magic practice and esoteric practice, they don't admit to the power of the environment of the external. They always like to say, "Oh, everything is within." And technically, this is correct. Everything is within you. Okay, but we live within primal bodies that naturally respond to external stimulants. You can't change this. You can't. No matter how advanced of a soul or spirit you think you are, you still have to go out there and seek solitude. Could not have Buddha transcended his individual self in some smelly dungeon sewer somewhere full of beggars and thieves and scum that wanted to rip his body to half and steal all of his belongings? He was a rich man, was he not? Yes, he was. Could he have not done it there? Well, ultimately, what these people tell you is that yes, he could have, of course. Then why did he choose to do it in solitude and in privacy? What is the function of solitude and privacy? The function of solitude and privacy is to isolate oneself from the external stimulants of life. Understanding the power of the external is very important. And you have to learn how to balance both. You can't just sit in your pretty little room telling others that everything is within you, and if the moment you change, everything else will change. Nothing will change. Your perspective, your angle of the world will change. Your expectations of the world will change. What you believe, go back to black magic, what you believe is to be true and applied to your life will change. But it will not drastically change because you live in a linear realm. It will change over time. It'll change slowly, gradually. And while it is changing, it will also show you resistance. So who is, I ask you this question now, who is the bigger idiot? The man who preaches that everything is within you and you can, yada yada, and believes a broken and frail and incomplete human soul, a journeyman spirit, is capable of achieving the level of transcendence that even someone like Buddha could not do it outside of solitude and isolation. Are they more of an idiot? Or is the person who discovers the voodoo doll beneath their little pillow, who is the grander idiot of the two? Well, both are grand idiots because one does not understand the implications of their own input, the implications of their own input onto the world, how they can give value and matter to things. And they're looking for constant external validation or confirmation or implication that, oh, this is why it happened. That is what, if I find a voodoo doll beneath my pillow, I am throwing it into the fire and I am unaffected. But then there's the other person who thinks only their input matters. Only me. It's a form of ego. Realize that, right? It's a form of ego. Me. Only my input matters. Whatever I decide internally is. You are deluded. You are distancing yourself from the objective collective reality, which you are supposed to accept, by the way. That's why we live in a collective conscious reality, because the conscious collective reality needs to be accepted. It needs to be bowed down to. You have to humble yourself before the truth. Because this is a realm, this is a truth that we have all constructed together. And if you truly experience the oneness you're trying to convince me that you're experiencing, and your understanding of that oneness is that only your input matters, and only your input determines the experiences you have in this life, to me, you are the grandest of idiots. At least the person discovering the voodoo doll beneath their bed sheets is not so ego driven, is not so fascinated and lusting of their ego to go out and say, only my input matters. So you're a degenerate saint. You've presented yourself to me as a degenerate saint who does not understand what this world is. One foot in the grave, other outside of it. One foot in the darkness, other in the light. One foot to the left, one foot to the right. The symbolism of duality is this. The symbolism of duality is your willingness to both accept and transcend, to both ground yourself and heighten your senses. You understand what I'm saying? So the master practitioner of this why this world is so funny. It's so paradoxical because the true master practitioner of this world, I always say this, it's not someone who's sitting on a mountain peak somewhere and praying their life away, praying their days away. The person who thinks their input is the most important and all that matters. And it's not the person who's involved in in having the best body or the most longevity or the healthiest skin or like a thriving business and whatever, and he'll come to like Me as a someone who practices face reading, if he's, oh, Jack, how do I look more charismatic? How do I do? It's the person. It is the most average, normal, decent, standard, sinning with the intent of doing good human being, you know. Your neighbor lady is a more, in the eyes of creation, in the eyes of God, your neighbor lady is a more awakened and conscious soul than most of the religious, highly religious practitioners, or most of the most successful people in this realm that exist. She is more sophisticated on a spiritual level than most of the people who are on radical ends of these two things. Because both of them are so stuck up in their own ego trips, manifested either in a masculine way or a feminine way, that they have departed from the experience of life. They have departed from the journey, from the theatrics, from the ritual, from the grandiosity of life. You know what? You know what? How you can look at it. The creator of this world gives you a movie, and he tells you, watch this movie with acceptance. And this is a movie of your life. Watch it, learn from it, have opinions from it, act on it, make mistakes. It's fine. I will forgive you. Watch the movie of your life. And then there's three kinds of people, okay? The first person, instead of watching the movie, they'll get up and they'll leave and like, oh, like, I matter, me. It's all about me. It's all about my movie. I don't even care about me. And the other person thinks the movie is all there is. He thinks, oh, the movie is all there is. Movie said, Bible said this, Quran said this said that said. They believe that there's all there is to the world. They have absolutely no input. They can't learn from the movie. They can't change. So you're watching a movie, right? And you can't change the movie as it's playing, but you can change yourself as the movie is playing. But they don't know that. And the third kind of person is just someone who can sit the fuck down, get a bag of popcorn, and enjoy the fucking trip. Now you tell me who's following the teachings of God better. When you understand that you're interfacing with the world, which is made up of a language of symbols, of geometry. You're interfacing with this world. When you look at a person, when you look at an item, when you look at a thing, all of this carries hidden information, very much like your deck of tarot cards, right? And all information, all creation, everything that could possibly even be created follows a certain pattern of creation. It relates to some sort of archetypal energy. And you can read this energy off of everything. You can read it off a face, you can read it off of a book, you can read it off an item, there's different interpretations of this energy. And then a great liberating experience comes in when you can understand, well, I can pick and choose what kind of energies I want to experience or relate to in life. But you also have to admit and confess. You have to confess that you're not the only one who's inputting these energies into these worlds. All of us are collectively inputting. This world that you live in is an input output system. Do you know what that means? Whatever you input into it, it will output it, or it will attempt to output it back to you. But it will not do so at the expense of the input output experience of others. You would have to be a deluded self. You have to be deluded in self-aggrandizement to to expect the universe to conspire against the other, to conspire to benefit you somehow. There's a foolish understanding of input. So if I input disappointment into my life, disappointment will most likely be outputted to me from the external. It's going to mirror it back to me. If I input hard work, it will output hard work to me as well. But again, it's not going to do at the expense of others. And it's not going to be immediate. It's also a lesson of life. Now, understand this, okay? The one element of life that you cannot predict or control in a predetermined or deterministic manner is human consciousness, human behavior. This is what this experiment is all about. If I put you in a room with another God, and I tell you both, whatever you input into this room will be outputted externally, not to you on a personal level, but to the collective. Can you make peace with, well, yourself, your other self, with the other God? If there are two gods in the room, and I give them both the ability to input and output, I've given you a mirror world. You're all gods. You all have this ability to input and output, some to a lesser degree and some to a higher degree, whatever. And the moment the first conflict happens, why are you inputting this? I didn't want to input this. Why don't we even put that and get that out? You see where the first point of conflict happens? So how can conflict resolution happen here? How can the heavenly state of ascension occur in this sort of space where, well, out of love for the other, one god or both gods will need to sacrifice their individual expression for wholeness. Now, pretend this is not just one room and two gods, but this is a massive room called Earth with millions of gods inputting at the same time, creating the consensus reality. Really, really think on that. Really, really think on what that implies, what that means. Does your input matter? Yes. How much does it matter? Uh, yeah. Maybe like remove a leg for each other human being that is inputting things into this world, right? So what I'm trying to teach you here is to understand that awakening, yes, it can be a personal experience, but enlightenment and ascension cannot happen on an individual level. It can only happen on a collective level. As long as one of us is not enlightened, none of us is enlightened because we are of the same source, yet we are fragmented aspects of that same source. So this is a very diluted and long form way of me saying get out of your own assholes, you ego driven maniacs in the spiritual space, you absolute monkey donkey people who have imagined themselves as greater than the God that created this very world. Get out of your own asses. Pull your heads out of your own buttholes and understand that humbling yourself before the other. to the best of your abilities, is the only form of worship. If you have a God, if you have a God, whatever God that is the only true form of worship. Because the other is the only and the closest thing to God that you have in this realm. Not a statue, not a cross, not any sort of geometrical what. We can talk about those things later. They have power too. They're light conductors, conductors of etheric light. But to stay on topic, until humanity learns that the human life is the highest value that there is. So it's not business, it's not bureaucracy, it's not well being, it's not good food, it's not personal gain, it's not career. That one human life ultimately matters more than all of creation itself. And for the preservation of this one human life, the world should have its back bent in trying to heal it into a state of awakening or enlightenment. Then we will live in a dark, dystopian, and very disturbed world. The world we live in today. You go out on the field, the sun is shining, the grass is green, the trees are beautiful. That's going to be it forever. So a dystopian world is not going to become dystopian only when you dim the lights a little bit and there's a fog and mist and there's cars flying around and it's a technocratic society. You already live in a dystopian world. You live in a dystopian palace, right? So understand this. This is why an ideology like, let's say, the art of quiet living comes into play. Because you have to learn how to hush and quieten, right? The ramblings of this world. Because most of the people, most of the things that are being inputted into the world right now are rather devious. Most of the people who are unaware that they're subconsciously inputting all of these terrible things into our world, you have to learn how to quiet them. Well, first you have to become aware of those things. You have to become aware of the voodoo doll, right? That's really through pillow. And you have to learn how to give it less meaning. Because then you're also inputting into that. You're creating an egregore of energy, a concentrated, semi sentient or pseudo sentient energy that can exist without you. I always give this example. So, for example, I'm not interested at all in soccer or football, however you want to call it. Is there still football and soccer in my life? Yes. I see it all the time. I see the football players. I see the stupid jerseys. I see the fans, fighting one another, cheering for their favorite club or team or whatever. Why? Because so many people are inputting the importance of football into this realm. What even is football? It's a man-made sport. It's an imagined sport. It does not even is an archetypal thing. Does not even exist. Any degenerate could kick a ball, but it's also a ritual. It's also a ritualistic. It's an agreement. It's a collective agreement that this ritualistic, external expressions of how we move our fingers and arms and legs and toes and blah 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 matters, is of importance. Which football team wins is of importance. We have agreed to this, and people pay millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to sponsor these players who are playing an imaginary sport that we've all just agreed to for some reason that is important. And if you kick the ball this way and not that way, oh, it's illegal. You can't do that. Why can't you do that? Because the collective input demands it. And the collective input is so intense around these massive sports That even though I am not inputting it into this world, I don't want to be inputting it into this world. It has still made its way into my life. I see an advertisement for football. I see this and that. So we are all collectively creating. And whatever you're inputting is being outputted not to you only, but to me. Ooh. Okay, this puts everything, you know, on its head a little bit, right? It's not as simple as like, oh, do good and good will come back to you and yada yada. It's not as simple as that, right? This is the next level. So this is beyond the journeyman's understanding of what the sophistication and the complexity of the world they live in. It's no longer as simple as 2 equals 2, right? Now we understand a very personal and bothersome truth that we're all in this fucker together. We're all in this together, ladies and gentlemen, and there's no one coming to save us because you've already been given all the tools to save yourself. If you're in a hole and you have a ladder, right? If like 100 people are in a hole and they have 100 ladders, okay? And you're like, help us, we're in a hole. Your creator is looking at you. I've already given you everything you need to build a ladder and get out of the hole. What are you waiting for? Your God is literally looking at you. Oh my God, what a pussy! Like, come on, like do something. Do something. Like show me your willing, your will. Do something. Make something of yourselves. And meanwhile, you can't even agree what kind of a ladder to make amongst yourselves. You don't deserve to crawl out of the hole. The hole is where you should be. Because the whole mirrors your internal state. It mirrors this collective state of your psyche. All these wars, children dying, women being harassed, raped, violated. It mirrors the internal state of our psyche. As your face mirrors the internal state of your psyche. All these nasty things on your skin, all these nasty expressions. That expression is just frozen on your face from having that deluded, ego-driven, terrible thought in your head. It's mirrored on your face for all the world to see. The war, the pain, the suffering for all the world to see. 4K HD live streamed on your television. It's showing you the vanity, the desperation of your own inability to make peace with none other than yourself in the form of the other. You know, a lot of people love to imagine that, oh, if I just had another me, if I just had another myself out there, the world would be such a the world is proof that that's not true because you already have several billion other people who are also, of the same mind and collective consciousness as you are. You can't even make peace with, well, most of them. And you've imagined yourself to be a god. You've imagined yourself to be beyond and above this world somehow. And that's what you're teaching and preaching and showing to other people. You're a degenerate. You're a degenerate fool. And if you think you can convince God that if you sit on a mountain somewhere, on a mountain peak somewhere, in some nice warm temple, and say, oh, God, I haven't done anything wrong to anyone. Can I ascend to heaven? God will tell you, what have you done? What have you even attempted to do in this world? I sent you to this world to work, to suffer, to advance, to progress, to grow, to help the other. And what have you done? You've locked yourself away in some isolated room, scared of life, afraid of making a mistake. Because your personal salvation, you're looking for personal salvation. You're a piece of shit. A God fearing man will send himself to hell for the other. You understand what that means? He worships the other. The final test of life, especially for those who follow the religious path, the final test of life, would you go to hell? Would you send yourself into a life of eternal fury, damnation for the sake of the other? And of course, most of these fake spiritualists and gurus, whatever, of course they'll say no because they're cowards and they live cowardly lives. They're afraid of making mistakes. They're afraid of going out there and inputting into life. Inaction and insanity are closer to one another than most people think. You don't know if you're doing the right thing, but you're trying. Great, I love you. I have adoration and admiration for you. God loves effort. You're trying to do better. You're trying to do the right thing. You're trying. Wisdom comes from effort, and initiation into a higher state of mind and into higher wisdom comes from effort. It doesn't come from speaking nicely all the time and just being a problem and a nuisance and everyone's, back. When you've imagined, so, oh, I'm not doing anything wrong to it. So the art of quiet living is understanding that most of the people who are inputting things into this world, you need to learn how to quiet them down, to hush them, to pay little mind, because the more focus and attention you give these things, the more they will grow. So the more of these collective inputs that are disruptive or provide dissonance, you don't want to help them grow. And you have your own input. But I will tell you again, this is a mirror. The reason these things exist and these things happen in our world, like war and so on and so forth, is because this is the only way for us to come to terms with our internal darkness. The world is forced to output the same to us so we learn more about ourselves. Most people on this planet cannot advance their spiritual states without seeing evil, darkness, pain, so on and so forth. It's of their own making, of our own making. So, this is why this grand ritual, the grand theatrics of life are unfolding before us in such painful manners, because this is the only way we'll learn. Look at the internal behavioral blueprint of a person. If you slap me in the face, what urge will I get? My urge will be to slap you in the face. Why? Because you slapped me in the face, you feel no empathy to me. You're wholly removed from my experience. So now I'm thinking, if I slap you in the face, you will be forced to empathize with my pain because you will be in pain. This is what the world is showing you. If you spit in my face, I will spit in your face because that's the only way I can grant you the wisdom of empathy in relation to the other. So understand this. The first and primary lesson of life is that you have to learn to both coexist and accept things objectively as they are, but to also find power in your ability to quiet the world, to hush the things that you don't want to be engaged with or engage in, to not feed energy to these things and people that are inputting dissonance into the world, right? And again, someone's going to come out again and be a smartass and tell me, well, Jack, everything is subjective, and how do you know if something is good? You have an integrated compass. It's called the compass of conscience, the compass of the compass of intuitive insight, ambition, desire, but most of all, conscience. So don't come to me pretending like God did not give you a compass to know what is against the collective good and what is not. Stop pretending like things like intuition and conscience don't matter. Law doesn't decide that. Law doesn't decide what's good and what's not. There are many laws that are evil, right? Law doesn't decide it. Your inner conscience, your intuition decides it. When you're going to engage in some behavior, you're unsure whether it's for the collective good or not. Where do you go looking? What do the masters teach you? What do the masters tell you? What talk to God? What do they mean? Talk to God. They mean talk to the lesser God that lives within you. Talk to your conscience. Talk to your intuition. That's what they really mean when they say pray to God. And the prayer is isolated experience and a meditative process with the conscience, because the conscience is your primary guide, and everyone has a personal conscience. You understand? This is why, let's say, religious masters will teach you do not judge the other, because God has assigned different roles for everyone, and they've given each person their own moral compass, their own conscience. And if they go against this conscience, they will invite self inflicted karma. So, the teachings of God, the teachings of conscience, even tell you if you steal an apple, okay, and your conscience is still go, I should not have stolen that apple, then you're going against your imprint. But if a starving beggar steals the apple and their conscience allows them to do so, may the Lord of this world fill their bellies. I'm not going to put the beggar or the thief in a prison cell just because standardized law says so. You cannot standardize God. You cannot standardize and universalize the experience of a God. Our child society, child's consciousness society, has yet to even consider the implications of these truths. But in the future, hopefully, we will. But understand this: the moment you learn that your participation is an agreement for something to either grow or reduce itself, then you become very picky and choosy about what you participate in. And if you want to attract something, if you want to attract a beautiful family of birds to live outside your home, what do you do? Do you go out yelling in the sky? "Oh, God, I want a family of birds. Give them to me. Blah, blah, blah." You're an idiot. Do you go out and steal a bird and put it in a cage? You go out and buy one, put it in a cage? It's hardly what you wanted. You think that's what you wanted, but you're just getting like the second best thing, the third best thing. What's the best way? What's the best way to attract that which you want? You need to create a space, an emptiness for it. You need to create an invitation for the things that you want to attract. If I build a beautiful nest outside my house, who is going to fill this nest? Who will this nest attract? Next morning, I wake up, I could have a beautiful family of feathery friends outside my home. You understand the lesson in this? You understand the lesson in that? That's the same. Now universalize this knowledge with everything else. This is how the master, he quiets the world, and he creates emptiness. He creates space for the space to become filled with the world he wants to create. Right? If I want, I don't know, a beautiful wife, okay? Do I make a fool of myself? Do I make a playboy of myself? Do I? No, I have to become, right? One whole, one humble whole. I have to become that which invites the presence of a beautiful, virtuous woman in my life, right? I have to become that. And the moment I become that, what does everyone ask a pretty girl at a party, right? Or family gathering? Oh, when are you getting married? When are you going to get married? Why do they ask this question all the time? Intuitively, subconsciously, right? Especially other women ask this because they see a beautiful young woman and an empty space next to her. You understand? They see her as worthy of being courted. They see her being worthy of having a side piece, right? So they ask, well, when are you getting married? Because she is in a state where it is expected of her to be courted, to have a fine gentleman by her side, right? Men don't get asked this a lot, by the way, very rarely, because most men are not in a state to attract a virtuous woman, right? They're not. So these are the two primary understanding, the two basic lessons of. There's far more when it comes to this ideology, but the two basic lessons of life. One, focus on what you give your attention to. You can say no to many of the inputs and the outputs that are happening in this world. You can, through your non participation, and I'm not going to talk about the third one because I talk about miracles a lot, but I'm not going to talk about the third one. I'm going to talk about that when I release this in book form because that's too extensive. Even these two, like they just sort of like created like a shorter, easier to understand version of them. But there's more to them. But yeah, first lesson: through non-participation, you can pick and choose your experiences in this life. You can pick and choose what you feed and what you're outputting into your own life. And this isn't being judgmental, or this isn't like escaping life, by the way, as some people who engage in demagoguery might tell you. This is your way of choosing the reality you want to augment and enhance, the energies you want to see more of in this world or less of in this world. And lesson number two is the only way to get what you want is to become worthy of it, is to create emptiness, to create space for it to occur, right? An empty um, vase attracts beautiful flowers. An empty space in your house attracts a gift, right? A beautiful dress attracts attention, the male gaze. So, right, things attract other things, but not in the way you think they do. Sometimes the lack of a thing's presence, the lack of a thing, tells you more than, well, its presence, right? Because the lack is so apparent. In contrast to what is, the lack is so significant. Think on these things, my friends. Think on these things. And don't underestimate the wisdom of simple things. Don't underestimate simple wisdoms. And don't try to make yourself into someone's lackey by just taking what they say as truth. Because most of us, most of the people who are in this world, we are journeymen. We are incomplete. Nobody knows what is the ultimate approach or the ultimate truth or whatever, because we live in a flawed state. Now, some of us, we have, through, let's say, vision, dreams, and experiences, we have experienced a small portion of the realms beyond. A small portion, most of which, 95% of which, have not actually, right? Have truly not. Most of which have fallen victim to trickster entities or trickster gods or whatever you want to call them, masquerading as bearers of higher truth. Give your energy only to that which you see as valuable and beautiful. That's it.